All right, YouTube, a record number of young Americans, as millennials essentially, are living at home instead of on their own or with a spouse. I can't say I'm surprised. You know, you take one look at the economy and what it's like. Then you take a look at the average debt load that students have, especially, or that anyone has at this point. And you compare the two and you say, if a person is trying to get ahead, does it make more sense to live at home, get their job, hold their costs down, carpool with their family? You're paying one cable bill, you're paying one electric bill, you're paying one internet bill, you're paying one bill on many things, one property tax. Does it make more sense to do that? Or does it make sense for somebody who's already like 20, 30,000 in debt to also take out a mortgage on their, mid-level income and have to pay that off too while also paying off their student loans? Oh, I think we've just isolated the problem here. And by the way, I don't see a problem with this. I don't like the NEET lifestyle. The idea of the NEET is someone who still sort of lives at home in their basement. They do nothing productive. They just literally shitpost and drink Mountain Dew all day, as opposed to somebody who is using the opportunity of living at home, being shielded somewhat from, I guess, the usury and debt of the world, which is crushing at this point, to, in some cases, they're just heavily bonded with their family. You'd think about the old style of American family, within an Italian community or something, very close-knit, or a Russian community. Extremely close-knit, especially around the mother. That's one part of it. And using that time for self-advancement to not to simply say, oh, I'm advancing myself by making memes. No, I mean like being self-employed, or they are working, they just happen to be living in the garage or something. I'm failing to see the problem here. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, let's face it, and it's really there are two groups that are ultimately at fault for this. The first is the government for making all of these economic fiascos over and over through its own interventionism to the point where the economy is crushing many people out. That's the first problem. The second group at fault, the educational system. Because these universities and colleges, when they get federal grants that are designed to hold down the cost so people can attend without $50,000, $60,000 worth of debt, instead they take that money and build a new stadium, and then they screw the students and raise their tuition even higher. If the government were to issue a $10,000 a year per student grant, to just give to people, put it towards your tuition costs, you know what those colleges and universities would do? They'd raise their tuition by $9,999, give the students $1, and say, look how good we're doing. We gave our students $1 for free. That's exactly what they've been doing. The government's intervention into the public education system has formed a situation in which all tuition will remain high. Private tuition remains high because they have to compete with public institutions that get federal money and state money. Well, that's kind of an uneven playing field. No wonder they have to pay more so that they can continue staying in business, so they can attract professors that aren't complete jackasses and actually know what they're doing. The public education system is screwed because so far there has been absolutely no attempt to rein in the cost. But I've got a great idea about how to rein in the cost of public education. Do away with all these federal grants and subsidies and so forth, and force these educational institutions to compete on an even playing field in a true free market situation. No more grants for research, no more grants for sports teams, no more subsidized loans, because let's face it, what would end up happening is that colleges would end up choosing between, we will cater literally only to like rich kids, or we're going to attempt to remain open. Yeah, there'll be a few more students per class. Yeah, we might not get that new stadium. We might not get that new solid gold throne for each college dean to sit on. But at the same time, we can lower our costs because we don't have to compete with all these other institutions getting that money as well. And it won't be a problem anymore. Private tuition will come way down as well. And it will be more affordable. These places, in order to stay open, they have to attract students to come in and actually be students there. Well, nobody's going to be willing to pay 20, 30 grand a year if they have to take out an entirely private through a bank loan. Another problem is loan companies, colleges and their loan services present this really smiley, friendly, oh, we're just like your high school teacher's face when they have students signing the forms, as opposed to telling them the truth, which is, hey, a bank's going to be nipping at your heels for the next 30 years. Force these people to actually go to an honest-to-goodness bank, read through this paperwork, and realize they're signing away their existence, and they're not going to be willing to do that. They're going to have to hold their costs down. Or you can cap the costs and just give people grants anyway, socialize it. But really, that's not necessarily a cost-effective way of doing it. Also, you look at the price of homes in many parts of the country. It's sky high. The price of automobiles, sky high. The price of everything has gone way, way up. It no longer makes sense for the majority of people in my generation to move out of their home. I live at home. I have no problem with this. I spend most of my day writing and editing and doing the work that I do. I do have an income. I'm not a NEET. I don't live in my mother's basement, as some stereotypically might suggest. I apply myself to things that require an academic mind that I have the capability of doing in order to make a profit within a capitalist system, outcompeting those that I'm competing with. But then there are those, of course, they're just a tub of lard and they just sit around all day and do nothing. I think it's a totally different situation. That's just my feeling on it. I know sometimes people conflate anyone that lives at home with a NEET. They're not the same thing. Or neckbeard, fedora, whatever it may be. You know, they go to furry conventions and then they complain when their mom doesn't give them a plate of chicken tendies every night. It's the old joke about chicken tendies. You should Google chicken tendies. You should Google good boy points and chicken tendies and read all about that. It'd be really funny because there are unfortunately people that are like that in an unironic sense. But no, I don't blame anyone for not wanting to move out and pay $600 or $700 a month in rent for a cheap-ass apartment while they're also paying off student loans or other debt, or while they're trying to pay for their food and everything. It just makes sense to consolidate your bills anyway. Why wouldn't you? Why would you want, you're essentially taking the family unit, splitting it into pieces, and then like doubling the cost of living. It doesn't make any sense in this kind of economy. The government and financial institutions and colleges and universities created the fucking problem. It's not the fault of some random millennial who, by the way, when things went to shit, was barely maybe 20 years old at the time. Some maybe pushing 25, a lot of them not even old enough to vote yet. It wasn't our fault. We didn't institute the sort of people that screwed up our financial situation. We're not the ones that did that. We weren't even voting at the time when Bush was elected in many cases. First time I voted was 2008. I didn't vote for Clinton. I didn't vote for Bush. And fuck Obama, you know, I didn't vote for him when he was up for re-election. I voted for Ron Paul. I voted for common sense. Well, unfortunately, a lot of other people chose not to. Romney aside, because he wasn't any better than Obama, let's face it. No, it's not our fault. It's really the fault of the Gen Xers and the Boomers. And if you're a Gen Xer and a Boomer, no onus against you, because in many ways the government and those same institutions misled you. I'm not on the Boomer hate train, so to speak. I realize this is the generation that had it really easy, and with your part-time high school job, you could buy the Firebird, and then, straight out of college, you immediately landed like 30, 40,000 a year union labor job, and you bought your house that same year, and within 3 years the mortgage was paid off, and you had all these portfolios and investments, and then you complain about, oh, millennials are so lazy. Millennials, they don't realize how good they have it because they have an iPhone. Well, you got to realize a lot of the luxury items that boomers took for granted as being within their reach. Your part-time job selling ice cream could pay for your tuition, essentially. Literally, a part-time summer job could pay the tuition to most colleges in those days, back in the nifty 50s. And it wasn't until the 70s when it started to take off, right around the time the war on poverty began. Oh, isn't that great? I'm sure we eliminated poverty by making everything cost more, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not on the boomer hate train, but I do get a little bit disgruntled when people, and I met some of them, unfortunately, online, who somehow are fully tech literate, people in their late 40s through their 60s, and oh, you millennials are so lazy, you don't want to work 3 jobs at Wendy's. You don't fucking understand, because the last time you were in college, it was actually affordable. The last time you had to buy a car other than some really cheap, shitty used car was, potentially decades ago. You still got your Firebird in the garage, so to speak. You bought your home back in the 60s, back when you could actually do that, and it wasn't difficult in many cases to do. While people now live under a different fiscal situation, partially because the governments in those days declared war on poverty, subsidized everything, screwed up the entire economy, signed a bunch of retarded interventionist deals they called free trade deals, which is the biggest misnomer in American history. And they screwed up the economy by virtue of doing this. So I don't blame people for staying at home. Yeah, you should. It's cheaper. Make sure to pay your parents some money. Make sure to be respectful to your elders. And don't just be a NEET. Don't just lie on your ass. Do something that's productive. If it's a 9-to-5 job, it is. If it's a part-time job, it is. If it's self-employment, whatever. Do chores, whatever you have to do. But yeah, it's a hell of a lot cheaper and easier, let's face it, than going out into the world and getting screwed every which way but loose because you've already potentially got debt anyway. You're trying to pay that off. How is a person? They get out of college around the time I did, and they realize, oh shit, the financial situation's all screwed up. Things are collapsing. There's no more jobs. Now in order to work at Burger King, I have to compete with these two dudes, and they both got Harvard PhDs, essentially. How are you supposed to get one of those minimum wage jobs you probably actually qualify for because you were misled by your teachers in high school and all the college admissions staff into thinking, oh, all degrees are equal, which they're not? How are you supposed to make 15, 20K a year? Pay off your student loans, which maybe 300, 400, 500 a month. Pay for your rent, 400 to 600 or 700 a month, even for a fairly cheap apartment. How are you supposed to do that and still put food in your belly? Oh, you'll have to get welfare. You see, this causes a spiral of problems within the economy at large, because then other taxpayers have to pay more. Unfortunately, those people in those positions, those jobs are going overseas. They're getting more and more scarce. Then that drives up debt, and then that causes the whole problem all over again. It's a vicious death spiral. Be better to privatize as much as possible, trust me. But yeah, I don't blame them for being at home. Yeah, what's the fucking problem? People in the old days, they used to stay at home till they got married. Sometimes dudes didn't marry till they're 30, 35. Of course, they married like a 10-year-old at the time. That's a little creepy. I don't think you're doing that now. But at the same time, yeah, have family ties. Help out your elderly mother, or help your grandmother garden or something. Be productive. Don't be a shit fuck. But at the same time, why go out and get more debt? What's the fucking point? So that when you're dead, Satan comes to you and says, oh, you still owe like that 40 grand in student loans. Well, you're going to have to eat these 40,000 turds that are lying before you. And you better be quick because they're going to multiply at a certain interest rate too. It's essentially what it's all about. That's really what debt's about. We should eliminate that concept too. We shouldn't even have loans in our society. There's really no point to it anyway. That's about all. Peace out.